Okay, you guys, welcome and thank you so much for joining me. We're going to be talking about, as with the title, the 22-year sentence that Derek Chauvin has received yesterday. Now, there's a lot of debate around that. Some people believe it was fair, while other people believe that it was not fair. The man deserved much more time. George Floyd's life deserved much more than 22 years in prison. Also, we're going to be talking about and dissecting Derek Chauvin's mother's speech and his speech to Derek Chauvin. We're also going to be talking about the emotional speech by Derek Chauvin's little daughter, Gianna. We know that she is 7 years old, having to live without a father. So there's so much grounds that we're going to be covering today. We're also going to be talking about, why the judge decided to give a 22-year sentence to Derek Chauvin for taking the life of George Floyd. And also, I want you to join in this live discussion. Give me your thoughts and opinion as you move along. But my first question that I will be posing to you today: do you believe that a 22-year sentence was enough for the death of George Floyd? Actually, on paper, it is 22 years, but it might not even be 22 years because with the prison system and how things are set up, you're likely to do just a portion of that time because you can get anywhere from 5 to 7 years off of your time served for good behavior. As you all already know as well, Derek Chauvin was in prison for some time and he will be getting jail credit based on what the judge said for his, I think, 180 something days that he has spent in jail. That is, somewhere close to 6 months. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, I want you to let me know if you have watched the live sentencing when it took place and just tell me your thoughts. George Floyd was not shot and killed. George Floyd was not killed in a heat of passion. George Floyd was not resisting arrest when he got killed. George Floyd was compliant and begging for his life, saying, "You're going to kill me." There were bystanders who were there begging for George Floyd. There was a firefighter. She was a first responder who was there begging to stop. Can I check his pulse? Let me help out. There were four police officers over George Floyd, one on his back and on his neck, two were holding him down, and one was guarding the people so they could not move to help Derek Chauvin, to help George Floyd. I mean, Derek Chauvin was acting as a police officer at the time with a badge. People couldn't just say, get up off of him and go push him off because there would have been serious consequences. George Floyd took 9 minutes and something plus seconds before he died, all the while begging until he lost consciousness in the most brutal way and the worst way possible on the dirty ground in Minneapolis. That's how he lost his life. He wasn't a dog. He was a person with a family, with a daughter, with brothers, with nephews, with people who cared about him, with a girlfriend. 22 years, in my opinion, is just not enough. There are people who get 100 plus years for just shooting at a police officer. There are people who get time, life sentence, sentenced to life in prison just because they were at the scene of a crime where someone lost their life, even though they did not pull the trigger. So to tell me that 22 years is the best that this judge could have done, no, that's a joke. That's an obvious joke. I beg to differ. It just shows the police system that we have here. It shows the kind of system that we have that constantly protect police officers even when they're wrong. And the fact that there are two justice systems, one for Black Americans and one for white Americans. one for police officer and one for regular citizen. And that I do not agree with. I believe he should have served the maximum. And when you heard George Floyd's family spoke, when you heard his nephew, when you heard his brother describe the pain, I can't imagine, because there is video evidence of it, and these things are played over and over and over in court. It was difficult for me. I couldn't watch, and I am not related to George Floyd. Can you imagine the people who are close to him, the kind of impact that what Derek Chauvin did had on them? So it was really absurd to me that a 22-year sentence is just a slap on the wrist. And yes, 22 years is a long time, but his death was also very cruel. So I believe he should have gotten the maximum, and they pleaded for the maximum. There were aggravated situation and circumstances, but he got far less than the maximum, which was 40 years. The prosecution team was begging for, give us 30. But the judge gave 22, and I think that he was being very, very lenient towards Derek Chauvin when he had given 22 years. He never should have gotten that time. He wasn't lenient at all to George Floyd. He was acting in the capacity of power. He was in his custody, and he did not provide aid to George Floyd. And so I did not believe that he should have gotten it. I think some of the most notable moments is the fact that Derek Chauvin went up and he spoke to the Floyd family, but it was nothing in comparison to what I thought that he would have said. First of all, I'm very surprised that he even went up there to say anything in the first place. I wasn't expecting him to say anything because I know he's an obvious narcissist. He doesn't believe that he knows what he's done. He doesn't think that he's guilty. So I didn't expect him to. But I was quite disappointed in what he went up there to say. You know, condolences to the Floyd's family, about two statements or two sentences from a man who killed him, who watched him cry and beg, please, please, you're killing me. To hear just two sentences, two very short sentences that were just empty and void from a man who take the life of your brother, your uncle, your father, that was nothing to me, you know. And it was better if he hadn't said anything, talking about there's another case underway and he has to be careful about what he says. But just don't say anything. You know what I mean? And his mother, with the audacity and the white privilege that she thinks she has, to say that if you sentence me, my son, you're also sentencing me. But what about Floyd's family? Because they could have easily argued that when you kill George Floyd, you also kill me. You kill my soul. You kill my spirit. These people are living unhappy lives, and you can see it. They don't know when they'll ever be able to recover. Every time they pass Minneapolis, they're going to have to be reminded. Every time they watch the news, they're going to be reminded of the pain and the horrific event that took place on that day. So it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that she would come, and she did not even mention George Floyd's family in the least of bit. Not one time did she say, my condolences to the Floyd. No, instead she said, I believe in my son's innocence. Oh, judge, if you send him to jail, oh really? So he shouldn't be sent to jail. He should just kill and hurt and take away another person's life. But then that's it, because he's a police officer. And the fact that he's a police officer meant that he should have known better, which is crazy. But I think that the most heart-wrenching is George Floyd's daughter. The sadness that was in her eyes. I don't even think that she can really process whatever happens right now. And that makes it even worse because she is 7 years old. A 7-year-old child should not have to process their dad being killed at the hands of a police officer. And at the hands of a police officer, someone who's supposed to serve and protect. And I can only imagine the types of questions that she's going to have when she grows up, but also the kind of fear that she's going to have of police officers. They took her father's life. This is another Black child having to grow up without a father. And this was totally unnecessary. A very involved father. She mentioned how much her dad used to brush her teeth before bed, how they used to play together and had meals together. And then the right have the audacity to talk about one of the biggest problems in the home is the lack of black fathers and single motherhood in the black community. When you're putting away the fathers for life for, minuscule things, maybe they had a little bit of marijuana on them, a minor nonviolent drug offense, an encounter with a police officer where they weren't being compliant just in the moment, maybe they had problems, a death sentence for nothing. The number of black people being in prison, especially black men, for crimes that are far, far, far more minuscule than the time they were made to serve. And you're saying that the number one problem in America is the absence of black fathers. It's crazy. And then you have people who watch Tucker Carlson show and watches Fox News religiously and are joining into this debate, and I have to wonder, are they serious? Are you living in a different America? And maybe you are because of the privileges that you have. But I think that this is time for us to do some introspection on the side that we're on, to do our own introspection into our lives and to see, do I have a bias? You know, what really hurts me about this 22-year sentence is the fact that this was very well highlighted. You know, there was just so much evidence, cameras on top of cameras, you know, not only body camera, but bystander camera, for them to see the whole event as it was taking place, and doctors breaking it down moment by moment by moment. And for people to say that, because people still believe that Derek Chauvin is innocent. People still believe that he should just get away scot-free, and that it was alcohol that killed George Floyd. Alcohol and other things in his system that killed him, maybe meth. Or he was just sick and he died, you know. I can barely comprehend that. And it really goes to show the kind of bias, blatant bias that we have. And, you know, I'm not a person who's quick to use the term racism, but we have to check for bias. Bias is something that is very, very real. Bias is something that affects a lot of us, and we have to look into ourselves and ask ourselves, am I biased? Am I being biased? We've got to educate ourselves on issues like these so we can join and become a part of a bigger conversation. We've got to do it. Lives are depending on it. We've got to do it, you know, and it truly, truly breaks my heart to see a judge giving George Floyd 22.5 years in prison when the evidence was there to support the blatant negligence and disregard for George Floyd's life. 22 years is just not enough. This wasn't a bullet. It wasn't a quick shot and kill. This was torture in the worst way. He died like a dog in the street of Minneapolis. And there's a big problem with that. So for a person to just get 100 years in prison, 100 years or a life sentence for shooting at a cop, not killing a cop, not shooting a cop, but shooting at a cop. You're getting your life behind bars. A police officer who's meant to protect and serve, getting 22 years with all the video evidence. No one can say that that Derek Chauvin didn't do it. There's all of this evidence and a man pleading for his life on the ground and bystanders pleading, get up. And Derek Chauvin had many, many chances to get up. And he didn't. Not ever. You know, not until the ambulance people came and they say, hey, get up. Can you get off of him now? But it was the way that Derek Chauvin moved him. Everyone else was trying to secure the head, trying to secure the foot, but not Derek Chauvin. He was grabbing his arm, and you could almost see, because he had no life in him at the time. And you can really see how he was just dragging him onto the stretcher with no regard for his life. When I took a look at Derek Chauvin, I saw someone who was just very heartless. I saw someone who has zero regard for a life. I saw someone with blatant discrimination. I don't want to say racism, but it's hard not to say it, since he has a pattern of doing this to mostly Black people. And if you're just joining me, you can tell me what you think. You can write in the comment section. Let me know if you believe that 22 years is enough for George Floyd's life, because I do not believe it's enough. Remember that he's only going to be serving a portion of that he could very well get out of prison between 5 and 7 years for good behavior. So he'll be only sentenced to 15, really, or serving 15. Whilst George Floyd's family, and it was so heartbreaking because I had to watch them begging for the life. I watched them beg the judge to give him the maximum, and the judge did not, and I don't see why. There were so many aggravating factors there. There were kids around. He killed George Floyd in a particularly cruel manner. Like I said, it's not a gunshot wound. And so many other aggravating factors, and so much evidence that we have. 22 years, in my opinion, is just not enough. It just isn't enough. And I think that it sends a strong message to police officers. And I'm not saying that it's not a good start, because it is. And we have to understand that a long time ago, this would have never happened. In fact, if that angel that showed up in the form of a 17-year-old, Darnella Fraser, didn't have the video, didn't capture it, didn't hold it still and make sure that she didn't miss a moment, chances are he would have still been in the police force. Chances are he would have still been doing this to Black people, Black men in particular. We see his history. He's done it several times before. George Floyd is not his first victim. The only difference is that George Floyd died. That is the only difference. And the statement that the police officers put out, that was put out by the police force, was that George Floyd died during a police encounter. And for this case, we know that there are hundreds of more cases like this. For every case that we see, there are hundreds and perhaps even thousands of cases like this, where an angel wasn't there to record and hold the camera so that we capture everything. So this is a start. It was an open court system and people got to see. This was full transparency at its finest, and a brand new day and a great day in America. But we have to understand that this is just not enough, and we cannot be satisfied with this. If after all the protest and after all the reforms and after all the evidence and after all the witnesses on witnesses that came forward, the ones who were there, the bystanders, and their commentary, the 7-year-old who said she was angry because, the police officer was stopping George Floyd's breathing. And the 17-year-old that says, when I look at George Floyd, I look at my father, my brother, my uncle, because they're all Black. And it's been nights when I stayed up apologizing to George Floyd, wishing that I could do more to save his life, but it's not what I should have done, it's what he should have done. He being Derek Chauvin. They were just the bystanders. And yet they were so troubled, you know. They blame themselves. They can't sleep. But after all of that, and we think that 22 years is just enough, like that is okay. Like, let's just give him 22 years. That is a slap on the wrist for the amount of evidence that people brought forward. And if this amount of evidence and bystanders and witnesses upon witnesses that came forth and medical evidence and all Derek Chauvin could have gotten is 22 years, then what about the ones that are not captured on camera? What about the ones that are only captured on body camera, doctored body camera? You know, so there needs to be a time, regardless of whether you're on the right or on the left, because it's not about whether you're on the right or on the left. It's about justice and peace. And that's what the American flag stands for. And if you are a patriot of America, then you have to be able to stand up for your country, because your country says it stands for justice and peace. And if that is the country that you're a patriot of, when you see these things, you have to speak out. Because one day it's someone else, and another day it might just very well be you. And I heard people saying that George Floyd was not innocent. I don't believe it's about George Floyd's innocence or guilt. That is not what it's about. It's not about George Floyd's innocence or guilt. What it is about is the fact that George Floyd wasn't supposed to die like that. A lot of people have issues with with George Floyd's statues being on the streets. A lot of people have issues about the renaming of the era where George Floyd took his last breath, saying that George Floyd does not deserve that, saying that George Floyd, you know, he has a bad history, you know, he was a criminal. These monuments, or let me call them statues, is not a representation of who you ought to be. It's a representation of injustice. That's what it is. So that when you go there, you can see that a Black man was killed by police untimely and unjustly, and it was wrong. That's what those statues stand for. It's saying that it was wrong. It's an acknowledgement of the fact that George Floyd didn't get his right to due process, something that America stands for. The right to due process. When you see someone, you don't just take their lives. They go in front of a court and you find them, get the court or the jury find them innocent or not innocent. But regardless of whether he was innocent or not, a $20 bill, $20. Let's say the $20 was fake. Do you really have to put him in a prone position that could kill him on the ground for $20? He didn't have an illegal firearm. He wasn't in possession of any harmful drugs. He didn't just shoot somebody and kill them. He wasn't harming anyone. A $20 bill, goodness, God, gracious me. Where's your conscience? Where's your heart? What are you on? Where's your forgiveness? Where's your compassion? Where is your humanity? A $20 bill. And you think you should put a man on the ground and kneel on his neck for 9 minutes over a $20 bill, a fake $20 bill. Give him a ticket, speak to him. If you want to take him in, just take him in. Give him a warning. What's your point? What is your point of arresting him, bringing him into the vehicle, taking him out of the vehicle, putting him on the ground? For what is your point? I think I know what the point is. You just wanted to do a Black person. I think that's what your point was, Derek Chauvin. And to see him in the presence of the Floyd's family after all the loss, and all he could say was, My condolences, you know. And I could see the pain in George Floyd's brothers. One of them in particular said, I want to hear from the man who did it. And I want to know why you didn't get up. Why, when he was begging for his life, you didn't get up. I want to, what is going on in your head? We went through a whole trial. I was expecting to hear from Derek Chauvin during the trial, and I didn't. He refused. He was like, I'll not be exercise. I'll be exercising my fifth, or I don't even know what it's called. But basically, what he was saying is that he's going to just deny it to comment. He's not going to say anything, and he didn't. And so no one knows. And now he has the audacity to say that there's something going on and he can't make any statement. But just my condolences. That's it. My condolences. It's crazy, and it shows how heartless Derek Chauvin is. But also, it shows me that there is something bigger at play. The audacity and the bravery that Derek Chauvin had to commit the most heinous crime, torture on a person until they died. But the fact that he did it in the middle of the street while wearing body camera, while the other officers were there, while bystanders were begging, and while people had camera, it goes to show that this man is being emboldened somehow. This man knows that he has protection. And so many other police officers who's been accused, some not convicted, unlike Derek Chauvin. George Floyd was lucky. He got some sense of justice. The Floyd's family are lucky in the sense that they got some essence of justice. There's so many others who haven't gotten that. Because of the lack of evidence? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's a lack of willpower to get it done. Perhaps it's a lack of heart, but not the lack of evidence. And another thing that pained me, and I had touched a little bit on that, was Derek Chauvin's mother. The audacity that she had, to say that I believe in my son's innocence, and when you sentence my son, you're also sentencing me. What about the Floyd's family? What about the Floyd's family? And I didn't even get a condolence from her. She didn't even seem to have cared. And Derek Chauvin looked as cold as stone and seemed only to feel sorry for his own self. But I hope that these symbols that so many people on the right, Tucker Carlson viewers, supporters, extreme right-wing people, feel that George Floyd did not deserve, I hope it stands as a symbol of the new America. I hope it stands as a symbol that police officers cannot just kill people blatantly and just get away with it or get a slap on the wrist. I hope it serves as a symbol for another police officer who think they can get away with it, to see it and be reminded of the justice that was served. I hope that we all can use that as a reminder of the kind of America that we want, because it also not only is a symbol of justice, it is a symbol of justice, but not only that, it's also a symbol of what America can be. And I hope that as people pass this, they will realize that had it not been for the marches that has taken place in May, had it not been for the bystanders who took video, this would not have happened. And as a result, take it up on themselves to become stewards of this country that you all love and respect so much. And know that you're involved in this fight because you are an American. You're involved in this fight. And this fight does not mean physical. It does not mean that you necessarily have to go out in the streets if you don't want to. It's about being a part of the conversation. It's about supporting. It's about understanding your role and responsibility to call certain things out when it needs to be called out. Like I said, so blatantly in my video yesterday during our live, I mentioned that I'm not against police officers. I'm for police. I've got families in various places who are police officers and at higher ranks too. I've never I've never had a bad experience with a police officer before. All good, all amazingly respectful and too helpful. Help that I didn't even think, I necessarily needed. But at the same time, it would be very hypocritical for me to come out here and say that blue lives matter when people are saying black lives matter. Because for all the people who are saying blue lives matter in response to black lives matter, then it shows that you're sick with bias and you have a problem. We're not saying, and by the way, there's no blue lives, okay? There's no blue life. No one was born blue. There's no blue lives. If you want to say police officers' lives matter, that's okay. But don't say it when people are saying black lives matter, because that is a different conversation. And it's showing blatant disregard for black pain. You know what I mean? When people come and they voice their opinion and they say what is happening to them, listen, you can't relate, listen. It's as simple as that. Just listen. I also can't relate. But it doesn't mean that I'm not just as passionate. Listen, joining and become a part of the conversation, listen, become a part of the conversation. Listen, that's what it's about. Don't say blue lives matter, because it's showing that you don't care about black lives. You don't care about the pain. It shows that you have something in your ears and you just don't care. You're saying like a child, you're saying la 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 la, blue lives matter. And that hurts, So we have to be very cognizant of what we're doing as a people and understand that the decisions we make are having tremendous impact in certain groups of people's lives. And it doesn't matter your racial profile. It doesn't matter if you're black. It doesn't matter if you're white. It doesn't matter what your racial profile is. It's everyone's fight. One day is for me, tomorrow it's for you. And we have to be our brother's keeper. We have to be your brother's keeper. There's no way around it. That's what justice is about. That is what justice is about. Because anyone who can't see that blatant racism, I've never been to a BLM march or protest. I've never marched. I do kind of believe that some protests can turn out dangerous. Not that people have the intent to be dangerous, but anything can happen. You have counter protesters, so I don't do that. But in whatever way you can support, do it. Even if it's just a conversation or a message that you write online on Facebook or conversations that you have with your friends that can enlighten them. But do it. One person who was on my live yesterday, what he was saying, or she, was that I'm quite surprised you didn't ban me from your platform. And I mentioned that I'm not about to ban anyone. I do believe that he's from the far right. He did not believe that that Derek Chauvin was innocent. That Derek Chauvin was guilty. Sorry, he thought that he was innocent, and he's wrongfully imprisoned. And he was like, "You didn't block me, and it's quite surprising that you didn't ban me." And I'm like, you know what? No, because if I ban you, you will not be enlightened about what is going on. If I ban you, then the message might not reach to you, because apparently you're a Tucker Carlson supporter. Apparently you're off the far right and you're watching OAN and Newsmax. And so that is also, for me, I have another message for, moderate people in the middle, and people who are even on the left, to say that, don't ban these people, try to enlighten them, because it only makes us better as a country when we can get everyone on board. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. It doesn't matter if you're a Trump supporter or whoever supporter you are. We must understand that, life cannot be like this anymore. We've got to stop. It's 2021. It's 2021. And Let me just say this, and this is so heartbreaking for me, but it's something that I have to say. Um, I make it clear that I'm not an American. I make it clear that I'm from Jamaica. Um, and something like this will not happen to me in my country. Like, I never have to ever worry. This is just bizarre. Like, that is not something I don't understand the true Black experience, because I'm not in a Black minority country. I'm in a Black majority country. And it's so empowering for us to see our president being Black and all the people on television, the news reporters being Black. And it's my only wish for people who are minorities in their own country to see how empowered it is. Racism to us is like, oh, this person is just so silly. But not for people in other countries, and that is understandably so. Because you get to live in a country where if you make a mistake, that's it. That's not it for me. And so my response to someone being racist towards me is going to be totally different than another person's response. Because for me, for a very long time, it was hard for me to even wrap my head or process or understand what racism was, because it was hard for me to have that concept because I was very young. From I was very young until now, I've been raised in a Black majority country. And, we don't see racism every day. I was, brought up, seeing different kinds of people in my environment. It was only Black. And for a very long time, I thought that Black people were the only people in existing. Not until I was 8, 9 that I saw white people for the very first time, when I visited America. But that's not what the conversation is about. What this conversation is about is the fact that, yes, I visited, and, I was on a date with a person. He was white. And we were coming back from our date, and it was a beautiful date. I was in Texas. And we were coming back from our date. And we got stopped, pulled over by police. But it was in 2016 when we had, Donald Trump running for election. And it was during that time. And we also saw a lot of, police killings of Black people. And I was there and I was watching the news. It was bizarre to me because I didn't know about these things, that police officers were, targeting Black Americans. I didn't even know this. So it was my first concept of that. And, I think a guy died also. And I think in that time we also had, a person died in Texas as well at the hands of, police brutality as well. And so when police stopped us, I was like, why are you stopping? Why are you stopping? And I was like, are we going to die? Are we going to die? Are we going to die? That was my response. Are we going to die? A visitor in America, he stopped us for, I don't know, like maybe the lighting wasn't so good on the vehicle. It wasn't my vehicle, it was his. And my response was, are we going to die? Is he going to kill us? There's something wrong with that. And I think that we need to do a self-examination of that. That is not cool. I was in fear of my life for the first time. I've never experienced anything like this before. But the fact that I saw it on the news and I heard people talk about it, I was like, man, are we gonna? Bearing in mind that these people were not bad people, they were police officers. They were wearing their uniforms, and that was it. They were wearing uniforms. They were police officers. They were paid to serve and to protect. But when I saw that, I was afraid, and I was saying, are we gonna die? First time in my life I've ever been fearful. I've never been fearful of cops. I never had to be. But as a visitor, I was in a white country, and I knew it. I was an outsider, a Black person in a white country. And I knew I wasn't home. Regardless of the amount of opportunities that America has, And it is a powerful country and an amazing country and a beautiful country, the most powerful in the world. All that power and glory. But if you're not comfortable, if you can't live in peace, a certain group of people, then it does not matter. All that money and it still doesn't matter. For me, I'm not living in the greatest country in the world. It's Jamaica. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's pretty. It's good climate. We don't have a big economy. I mean, people aren't suffering. People do have a little bit. It's okay. I won't say it's poor. I think it's richer than a lot of people believe. But it's not a rich country. But the pride that I feel as a Jamaican and the joy that I feel knowing I never have to worry about this. The fact that I can go about my day and never worry about people being racist to me, calling me the N word. It's never going to happen in here, you know? It's never going to happen. I never have to worry about that. What I'm doing, I'm taking it up on myself because it's everyone's fight, regardless of whether I will experience it or not. Because I can tell you right off the bat that I will never experience racism in my country. And my kids, when I have them, will also never have that fear that police officers might potentially take their life because they make a wrong move. No, you can move your hands. There's no such thing as putting your hand straight on the wheel and never look back. No, that's not a thing here. You don't have to worry that your hand makes a mistake and you accidentally go in your pocket and boom, you're shot dead. You never have to worry about that. I never have to tremble when I hear a police officer's voice. It sounds like an angel to me. I think they're rescuing me or I think they're trying to do something good. I never have to worry. And it's a very liberating feeling. There's not a lot of money here, you know, not that fancy, glamorous, big life. I mean, we do have the internet. I wouldn't be live streaming, and lights, electricity, and food. I'm well nourished. But I think that one thing that we do have is a confidence in ourselves as Black people. We never have to question our race. We never have to wonder if we're worse than anyone else. We feel empowered and we feel on top. And that is what a country needs to provide for every single citizen. I feel badly for people who are feeling less than because of a color. It's crazy to me. It's like going in a store and all the white clothing are for like $3 million and all the Black clothing are like for $5. I never go into a store and see they put a price tag based on color. I don't get it, you know. I don't get it. And I don't understand people who, there's so many things that I can't begin to understand. And there's so many things that I am learning as I go along the way. But let me just say this, the fact that you're living in America doesn't mean that you have it all. Because I wouldn't trade my life for anything or for any other country. Kids don't ask their mom, Mom, why am I Black in this country? Kids don't go home and their parents are like, I believe that your teacher is a racist. No, no. Police officer don't see your color when they're responding to you because they're the same color as you. They're Black. Everybody is Black. Almost 100% of the people. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So no, you don't have everything as Americans. No, you don't. Get off your high horse and realize. But also, you can make this country a country that would embrace people, all people, even though you're different. Jamaica has different people too. I mean, we are majority Black. I'm the majority in my country, but you do have whites and you do have Chinese and Indians and, people from all races. But what is our motto? Out of many, one people. out of many one people. And that means if you're Chinese, you're Jamaican. And if you're white, you're Jamaican. And if you're Indian, you're Jamaican. And if you're black, you're Jamaican. And don't expect to get two different justice systems. Well, there is classism, of course. There is rich versus poor versus middle class in the country. And you do have people who are like significantly, maybe the ones from ghetto areas or something like that are more susceptible to police violence. And I'm not saying that it's perfect. I mean, that also happens, not in my area, but in some areas. My zip code is good. It's okay. I never have to worry about that. But there's some people in Jamaica that has to worry about that. There are problems here too. Not a race problem, but there's certainly a class problem. But we want to live in a country where everyone is embraced. You know what? Black people need to be treated like kings and queens in America. They have slaved and they have worked hard to build a country that you are proud of. When you see a black person, good morning, miss, hello, ma'am. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your duties. To hell, you're having people being racist, calling them the N-word. Are you kidding? I can't even wrap my head around it. I can't even wrap my head around it. The highest respect. Thank you. Please, miss, ma'am. And payment for their service. But even if you're not going to give them payment, respect goes a far way. They should be the most treasured prize in the country. And that is why I cannot understand. I can't wrap my head around it. The audacity to be killing black people. After all, their ancestors sacrificed and death for this country. They shouldn't be walking around feeling like second-class citizens. They should be walking around feeling like kings and queens. They made this country what it is. Talking about America being great. America is great because it cheated the system. It cheated. It jumped in the front of the line by using African Americans. And instead of being thankful for their service, try being racist to me when I go to America. Just try, because I will have an answer for you. No, I didn't pick those cottons. My ancestors never did. But you need to treat black people with respect. America needs to treat black people with respect. And don't take disrespect from white people when they're trying to be disrespectful. Put them in their place with your words and with your brains and let them know and claim your position because you fought for it and your ancestors died for it. Claim your position and stand strong and firm and saying, listen, I'm not going nowhere, honey. This is mine. We built this. That's what we should be doing. It's crazy to me. It's laughable. It's freaking laughable. After all your service, this is what you get, slap in the face. It's laughable. Don't cry when you hear people using words that you don't like. Put them in their place and let them know. Bring it to them with your words and show them that you're not afraid and that you're strong. And very soon, racism will come to an end because they'll realize that you're not weak. Their words don't mean anything. And I know it's easy for me, it probably is, because I don't know what it's like, you know what I mean? But put them in their place and let them know. Don't accept it. And that's it for my video today. I'm not going to keep you up any longer. Thank you so much for those who have been here with me throughout the day. And like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another video I was ranting for a quite good portion of it. But thank you for being here. And like I said, like, share, and subscribe and comment. I want to know what you think about it. And remember that this is your country and you need to fight for your rights and not let anyone take that away from you.